Piano is one of my very favorite instruments, and today I am in Zurich talking with a very accomplished pianist, Elaine Fukunaga. Pianist Elaine Fukunaga completed her soloist diploma with distinction in May of 2010 at the Zürcher Hochschule der Künste in Switzerland. Just before moving to Zurich, she spent a year in Madrid as a graduate research fellow of the Fulbright program. Having completed the master's degree program in piano performance at New York's Manhattan School of Music in May of 2007, Ms. Fukunaga gave her debut recital at Carnegie's Weill Recital Hall in March of 2008. A 2005 graduate with distinction of the University of Kansas, she has regularly performed and taught within 3 disciplines: piano, saxophone, and violin. She has been heard in major performing venues in Spain, China, and Italy, as well as at New York's Steinway Hall, the Kennedy Center, Aspen's Harris Hall, and the Leeds Center of Kansas. She has also been featured as soloist with the Winterthur Sinfoniker in Switzerland, the Orchesterverein Wiedikon, also in Switzerland, the KU Symphony Orchestra, and the Blue Valley Northwest High School Wind Ensemble. And she has performed and presented at the conventions of the Music Teachers National Association, Sigma Alpha Iota International Music Fraternity, and the World Piano Pedagogy Conference. Ms. Fukunaga is recipient of awards not only from the Fulbright Fund, but also from Downbeat Magazine, the Presser Foundation, Manhattan School of Music, Sigma Alpha Iota, the World Piano Pedagogy Conference, the Empire State Competition, the KU Honors Program, and the Kansas City Musical Clubs. In 2009, she won second prize at the international music competition Premio Vittorio Coffa Righetti in Cortimiglia, Italy. Her major teachers include Homero Francis, Anne Shine, Isidro Barrio, Philip Kewin, Jack Weinrock, Alice Downs, and Vince Gnoyek. Her summer activities have included the Sommer Akademie Lenk in Switzerland, the International Academy of Music in Castelnuovo di Garfagnana, Italy, and also a regular dedication to the Aspen Music Festival. She has taught both privately and for the Manhattan School of Music Educational Outreach Program, and has been a constructive member of Piano Vision and the Music Teachers National Association. Her Fulbright project in Madrid, a focused study of the piano works of Spanish composer Joaquin Rodrigo, along with her continuing activities in Europe, have served her lifelong dream to travel the world performing, teaching, and supporting intercultural understanding through music. Elaine, let's get started.
Okay.
Who is or who are your heroes, musically speaking, and why?
My heroes have been my teachers and a few other important people in my life, for sure. Mm-hmm. I would have to say my very first piano teacher, with whom I studied for 6 years, from age 5 to 11. She's the late Kathy Rice from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Really did amazing things to instill a love and a passion for music in me at a young age. That on top of the discipline of how to work and what elements of music to bring out, you know, what I could grab hold of as a child, how I could get excited. That was priceless to me. Also my family, I come from a musical family, so certainly my heroes were my parents, who took me to concerts and also practiced at home with me listening. It just created a real context for it.
Okay. Now, out of all of these people, or perhaps even somebody different, somebody famous, a famous pianist, who was the most influential for you and your music?
Well, all of my many teachers have been very influential for me. But if I have to pick one, I'll say Anne Shine. I studied with Anne Shine for 5 summers at the Aspen Festival. And the reason I kept going back to her time and time again was because I really was getting a powerful experience each summer under her guidance. It was a special thing for me to be able to step out of my normal everyday life where I was living at the time and head back to Aspen for some real deep music making. She has a sense of musicality and expression. I can't think of anybody who goes further.
Okay. And these are personal experiences, and those are of course probably the most important influences in a developing artist's life. But if you think about the people that you haven't met, the people you only know, from afar through recordings and perhaps seeing them on stage, the famous big names, which one of those people have influenced you a lot?
Well, I can say as a kid, I fell in love with Chopin immediately, and the recordings that I got familiar with right away were Arthur Rubinstein's recordings, the Chopin collection, and I was just listening obsessively in elementary school to all of Chopin's works recorded by Rubinstein. But I always listened also to, for example, Brendel playing Beethoven, and other greats that I always enjoyed hearing were Arau and Horowitz. So it's just impossible to name off all of the countless influences, but those were some greats for me.
Okay, very good, very good. Now, as we all know, being a professional musician, that takes a lot of work and dedication and practice. So everybody's a little bit different. What does a typical day or typical week, even though there is no such thing as typical in a musician's life, but what does an average day or week look like in your musical life?
Mm-hmm. Well, you said it, there is no typical. It really depends on what's going on in my performing schedule, for example. At any given moment, there could be a week of performances in a foreign country, for example, on tour, where that's completely atypical, but fun, exactly. But that would entail, waking up in the morning, going to the rehearsal space, for a morning of practicing, and then maybe rehearsing with an orchestra if there's an orchestra later in the day, and then concerts at night, and of course some good social time afterwards. But
gotta keep the balance. All work and no play makes a very bad musician, or whatever the saying is.
I'm a firm believer in having a good time with what we do, right?
Yes, as every musician is.
Yes. Well, I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so. Nonetheless, a week at home might entail, I have a regular teaching schedule, so that I try to keep consistent. And if I'm preparing for something coming up real soon, then I'm scheduling each and every hour where I can fit some repertoire in between students, Maybe I often write it out, 8 to 9 a.m. Beethoven, 7 to 8 p.m. List, in this manner I get everything done, because it's not always easy to find all the time that I feel that I need in order to prepare. Other times I can be relaxed enough to be working here and there on long-term repertoire goals. So it really just depends.
Okay. Now, everybody hears about the long hours that it takes to practice, and of course every instrument is different. As a flute player, we can practice pretty much all day. We're not going to wear out our chops. However, a trumpet player, a French horn player, that's not even possible, get much over 4 hours a day. As a pianist, as a professional, how many hours a day do you need to be able to do what it is that you do?
If I'm at my prime in performance mode, I have things coming up, then 6 to 8 hours is a good idea. Though I do have to watch it a little bit physically. There are certainly physical limits.
Right.
And even when you're in training, in good condition, it's, piano is an instrument that's hard on the back, can be hard on the hands. on the arms, depending on what you're playing, on even I've had problems with breaking nails, and I mean just from sheer impact. There are so many little things that just naturally, if you do anything that long consecutively, then there can be issues. So always listening to my body, I can find the right amount of practice.
Okay, and that would be important for anybody to do. You know, really listen to your body. If it hurts, that's a clear signal to stop.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Certainly.
And going along those lines, have you ever had a performance or a playing injury where you just weren't able to play anymore because something had gone wrong?
Nothing severe, thankfully. I feel very lucky. I've always had pretty good condition. There have just been a few times when I've needed to take a day or two off, recognizing that I was starting to feel something that wasn't quite right. And I always recommend also, certainly to my students, I say, you know, if anything's not feeling right, you stop immediately, assess the situation, and perhaps really, you know, take time. Just let yourself be human and recover. Right. And then we can move forward with everything after that. So there have just been little things that come up.
Okay. Now, let's see. You probably have a concert coming up. So what goes through your mind? What is your mental process before you're on stage, while you're on stage doing your work, and after the concert's over?
Well, if I've done my work well, if I've practiced well and prepared well for the concert, then I feel stable already with the music. This is after a certain number of hours of repetition and just feeling like, you know, this is the goal. I must find my flow, my groove with this music and really be living and breathing the music before I arrive at the concert hall. In that situation, which is always the goal, then backstage before the performance, I would just simply be saying to myself, okay, we're ready, we're gonna do this. There's a certain inner monologue going that's just very cool and collected, and okay, is it time to go onto stage now? Okay, fine, here we go. Then during the performance, there's a level of concentration that one reaches, where it's not on the same level of conscious personal thought. It's not ideally about how I'm feeling in the moment, but rather how does this part of the music go, and yeah, it comes automatically, but still very very present, simply going in a certain flow. If I need to correct that flow and bring myself back into the moment, then I might use a word like focus, very, very briefly, just to remind myself, okay, we're on stage here, it's time to be performing. And then after the performance, it's still a level of rational, cool, where, you know, maybe I'm thinking, okay, how many bows do I take before I give an encore, or whose hand do I need to shake now? Oh, there are flowers coming, how nice, smile, you know, it's all planned out, but also very automatic and very, very pleasant, and certainly I need a period of winding down before I celebrate, for example.
Okay, now it sounds as though this flow state that you get into when you're on stage, for a lot of people, that is a hard goal to meet, usually because of nervousness. So, do you get nervous when you perform, and if you do get nervous, what do you do about it?
I get nervous. I'll say that in the sense that I never go to a performance and feel like I'm at home playing by myself. There's always something a little bit different and something a little bit exciting, of course, and sometimes something to be a little bit on guard about. I want it all to go well. but my goal over the years has been to perform frequently enough that it becomes just old hat, and also to work on my level of preparation, just expecting so much of myself in my level of preparedness when I arrive at a concert that that I know that it's going to go, it's going to happen, it's going to be fine,
right?
Because I'm carrying the music with me anyway. So my nerves have gotten much better over the years. It's a matter of channeling energy.
I would definitely have to agree. A couple of weeks ago I performed and I had a really good time at it. And while I was performing, the relationship between how I feel and what's going on in the music was very, 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 very close. It's like, okay, this is happening in the music, and the emotion and the feeling that works with this musical element is perhaps passion or absolute sadness or joy, and I try to put my own feeling, my own emotional take on that, and express that, through the flute and through the music. Is this what you were talking about when you were talking about what's going on in your mind while you're on stage? That you said that it wasn't so much how you feel, but what the music's doing.
Right. That's the level of being connected to the music. As you said, it's a closeness where you're tied in with it. What you're doing is the music. You are the music, in a sense.
Yeah.
You're transmitting it. You are still in there. I don't believe that there's no performer in it, and it's just, coming straight down from the composer in the heavens, or, channeling through. Right. That's a little bit of a scary thought, and also not natural, just not natural. We
that's
live
a
in
seance, that's not a performance.
Right, and then what am I? What's the value of actually having a living, breathing performer here playing live, So, but yes, certainly, I think we're talking on the same level. It's a really difficult feeling to describe, but I think it's one that many performers are experiencing.
Oh, well, I would certainly hope so. I mean, this certainly was not where I started off when I, was starting my own performance career. In the beginning, it was just all technique. Okay, make sure I've got this right. This needs to be like that. This needs to be like that. It was as though I was a robot, and it wasn't until recently that I regained, I like to call it my authenticity. That's something that you have to kind of develop, I think.
Well, in a way, this is a thing that we have to fight to keep while going through school in particular. I think in a music school setting, it's very difficult not to fall into the mindset of, okay, what can I achieve technically, must play this piece, by this date, and you sort of, you're so driven by sort of cold, hard goals,
right,
that you lose yourself and your way of interacting with the music, which is unlike anybody else's way of interacting with music.
Definitely, I would definitely agree. Well, going back to the process of playing, and once your performance is over, everybody has an opinion, and of course our opinion is always with us. It's there while we're on stage, it's there before we go on stage, and of course afterwards. That internal dialogue is so important. How do you deal with yourself after a performance is over, whether it's gone well or badly or whatever?
I almost thought you were going to say, how do you live with yourself? Because sometimes it feels this way.
Yes.
But we are our own toughest critics, right? And I'm certainly no exception to that. So it's a thing where you have to have some perspective. It's hard in the moment, but if there's maybe a recording to go back to, this has happened to me quite a number of times where I've thought, oh, this was not a good performance, oh, rough, just
right.
rough. I'm
Right.
sorry that had to happen. And then there's a recording, and maybe I work up the nerve 3 months later to listen to it.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, it's
can't
listening
listen
to my own recording. Oh, it's not my favorite thing to do.
Oh, I like that.
I push them aside. So, but yes, when I work up the nerve to finally push play, sometimes I'm surprised actually that was fine, you know, and maybe it just had a little bit more character than I intended. Maybe I was thinking too critically in the moment, and then, you know, I hit a crack, and then all the world comes crashing down, but actually not, right? And that's always a relief. And this is going back to what I said about preparation and this level, the standard that I try to keep for myself is so high that it's hard to understand in context of performance. Did I actually meet this standard, or, you know, where did I stand? But if I prepared very well, then chances are the performance is going to be fine.
Okay, very good. So, how do you deal with the opinions of others? How do you deal with praise and criticism?
Well, praise is always nice.
Yes, isn't it?
That's not so hard to deal with. Criticism. Thankfully, I've never received a bad review, at least not a published one. Maybe most of my bad reviews have been from my teachers, possibly from family members and friends, but with good intention. And as long as I can take everything constructively, no matter how it's said, because there are some harsher speakers in the music world.
People who do not mince words.
Right, exactly. But if I can digest what's being told to me in a way that I understand the motivation and also what I can do with that, then it works out okay. So I think I've developed a thicker skin as the years have gone on. Okay,
now I think this is really important. This touches on an issue that I'm quite passionate about, and that would be criticism while studying. And in the beginning, of course, who has such thick skin, you know, to just be able to take it? No problem when somebody really close to you tells you in no uncertain terms, that was really bad, you did that really bad, that stank, whatever. How do you separate what's useful and what perhaps isn't useful? Because sometimes during not necessarily a harangue or a screed, but during a conversation, let's call it that, sometimes not everything is useful. So do you have a filtering process, or do you just, you know, take it all in, take it all to heart?
Yeah, once in a while I'll hear a comment that I think, actually I don't agree with that, and then I think there's a file in the brain that says maybe, noted, you know, this person thinks this. That's all.
Okay.
Nothing deeper than that. It doesn't get to filter its way into the other files.
Right. And so you don't take it personally.
I try not to. No, usually not. Usually it's fine. And honestly, the hardest things to hear are generally true.
Okay. Yeah.
Not 100% of the time. You have to look for a person's motivation.
Right.
What they say. Or there's usually some truth you can take from a negative comment.
Okay. Okay. Well, that sounds like a really healthy way to deal with criticism. You don't want to be arrogant, like, oh, nobody understands me. And you don't want to be a sponge, oh, I'm so terrible. So that sounds like a good balance.
There's no time in life for either of those.
Okay, okay. So let's see. We have all had those moments.
Uh-oh.
Yes, exactly. For me, the moment, the worst moment ever. It's my final recital. I know all of my pieces. I know them so well. I could have written them out for you longhand. I knew my part inside out, upside down, backwards. I get on stage, I do my first memorized piece, no problem. I do the second one, blackout. It's gone. And this is the memorized piece, so there's no music anywhere, and
yeah.
I lost. And that was my worst moment ever. I managed to, I think on the third try, get through it, but still, that was... Oh, I was upset about that for a very long time. But what was your worst moment?
Honestly, I'm a bit surprised you still remember that, because I'm sure that I've had moments that I've blocked out.
Oh.
No, really, because we get so wrapped up in, you know, our self-worth can sometimes feel like it's on the line, you know? And sometimes it's easier to forget, or better to forget. So I think, especially in my earlier years, I'm sure I had some very bad performances that I just haven't allowed myself to remember. Let's see. Something more recent. Last year I was playing a concerto with orchestra, a series of 3 concerts. They were lovely. It was a great experience. It was the last of the concerts in the nicest hall with the nicest piano and the nicest audience, and all the conditions were great. And I was wearing a dress with a strap around my neck like this, a halter strap. Everything was in order, nothing was dangerous actually about this, but I felt a seam give in the strap. And I could tell, I mean, nothing was visible. Or I guess I wasn't entirely sure if they saw anything move, you know, but there was no danger, let me just say. No severe wardrobe malfunctions on this go-around. Nevertheless, I just felt suddenly insecure, you know, that feeling of being naked on stage. Even
it's a big nightmare, isn't it?
It's a total nightmare. And in the end, nobody noticed anything. I asked around even, you know, there was actually no problem. It's just that this strap was hanging around my neck instead of actually being well attached. And just in that moment, it just felt like, you know, nightmare coming true. One of those moments that, you know, after all the work and this great opportunity to play this beautiful concert, and that's gonna get in the way, you know. So it didn't in the end, but that can do a number on the concentration as well.
That's good. Wardrobe malfunction. That of course, if it had, you know, gone all the way, that of course would be a complete and total disaster.
Well, that's an anecdote not to be beaten.
No. Of course, it's one of those things, oh, you'll look back and laugh later, or not. Maybe
depends on whether or not it was on camera, right?
Right. But what about musically or technically speaking? Have you also ever experienced a blackout, or just something technically going totally awry?
Certainly in my worst nightmares I have. This is the stuff of nightmares, honestly.
So no nightmares have come true?
No. Of course, in the nightmares it's usually exaggerated, where you get on stage and it turns out you didn't actually learn the piece that you were supposed to play, and you don't actually know how it goes, you know, that kind of thing. Yes, I would have to say I've had memory slips in my career, in my lifetime. I don't know who hasn't.
That's a good point. Okay.
Especially, you know, in the formative years. I mean, it's a thing you have to learn, how to play from memory and how to keep your concentration, how to keep everything, you know, running along smoothly.
And going back to that inner critic, to how to keep that person from tearing you apart once you get off stage.
Oh yeah, it's all control. It's a lot of attitude and just training. Yeah, but thankfully, no, I don't have any anecdotes of severe musical disasters.
No, that's good. That's good. Well, let's hope that it remains so. Well, if you talk about the bad, you should also talk about the good. What has been your best experience on stage and performing?
There have been such powerful ones, such amazing ones. For example, I have little flashbacks of good moments on stage and that feeling of euphoria, you know, the performance high.
Yeah. That's always nice, isn't it?
Yeah. I got to give my debut recital at Carnegie Hall 3 years ago, and the recital went beautifully. I was playing, I think at that point, the best I'd ever played, and I felt great about that, and I was really in the music, really feeling, you know, even almost borderline too much emotionally invested in what the music had to say, but anyway, it felt
bordering on
awfully
sentimentality.
powerful. Yes, exactly. And I was living in Spain at the time, and so I had programmed the second half of my recital to be all Spanish, and it was just fun. It was like, you know, where I could really open up and really relax and enjoy and you know, on some level show off what I had been doing overseas. And then I did an encore, and it was La Danza del Fuego, the ritual fire dance of De Falla, an awesome transcription, just fun, you know, with glissandi and with tremolo stuff, and, you know, yeah, I mean, really, really danced like a really just up, and that was my encore, and then, you know,
went out with a bang.
A real bang, you know, one of these, you know.
Oh, nice.
And then the crowd just explodes. Of course, it was full of my friends and family, but nevertheless, it was an exciting moment, you know, just so charged. And so, okay, that's a special moment in a special setting.
Okay.
One memory I have, but there have been many.
Excellent, excellent. So you can, you know, just look forward to collecting more and more of those.
Exactly.
That's very good.
Exactly.
Very good indeed. Okay, now, you talked about not having regrets. So maybe this question will be quick to answer, but if you could change anything about your career or studies, what would you change?
You know, I think I would have practiced more from the age 11 to 19 or so. You know, those are years when I felt like some of my colleagues were surpassing me in discipline and ability, and then I had some catching up to do. But generally, I think I've been more or less on track where I've wanted to be. And I'm a person who likes to look forward to the future. So there's a lot of planning to be done, a lot of the business aspect of career to be worked through, and just always cultivating more and more opportunities. I'd like to play more chamber music. I'd like to tour more abroad because I love to travel, and why not? And so these are just things that need to be arranged and worked hard toward.
Okay, this is a very good answer, and I think that that's not only good in terms of music, but also in terms of life in general, because you can't really go back and change anything even if you wanted to. You know, that part's done, but to just keep your eye on the future and what you can do now so that you'll be able to create what you want later on. That seems like a really positive way to focus on any career or on any aspect of life.
I think it's necessary. You know, that's what life is about, working toward goals.
Okay, well, let's see, as the last question then, what would you advise, you know, the up-and-coming musicians of tomorrow, or maybe just, you know, the creative people of tomorrow, artists, graphic designers, dancers, what advice would you have for somebody trying to develop a career in the arts in these times today?
You know, I'll speak specifically for music because it's what I know best, but I would say there are two parallel tracks along the way toward becoming a professional musician. And as a teacher, I like to also share this with my students, instill these sort of values of the profession, because you can't get there without having one foot on each track. And those are discipline and passion. That is to say, even if you're really excited about music and you really love it, you're going to have to work, you're going to have to know what's involved, be willing to dedicate the hours and the even all psychological aspects of it, and just, you know, make sacrifices to get there with the discipline. And on the other end, it's also that you can work as hard as you want technically and stress out about performance goals and meeting deadlines and creating the right contacts and all of these things. But if you do that without passion, without remembering why you're doing it, then you're not getting there that way either. So, discipline, passion. That's it.
Excellent, excellent, very good. I would definitely agree. I mean, if I look back on my own experience, in the beginning it was all passion, no discipline, and then later on it was all discipline, and I forgot literally why I was doing music. So it's just one crisis after another, and now it's great being able to synergize the two. So I would say that's very good and practical
I
advice.
think we all go through phases, actually, of being more focused on one or the other. Clearly, sometimes there is some performance stress where you just try to drive yourself as hard as possible with the discipline, but it can't go on like that for very long.
Right.
In a healthy manner. So keep sight of both.
Excellent, very good. So then, Elaine, thank you so much for sharing with us all today.
Well, thank you.
And if you would like to see some more information about Elaine, you can check out her website at www.elainefukunaga.com. Okay, so thank you again.
Thank you, Carrie.